Good evening, and welcome to episode 6 of our Let's Play series in Space Engineers. Let me fix the volume here real quick. My system is being extra non-responsive today, which will be fantastic. Hopefully we won't have any issues in game. Anyway, in our last episode we got hold of some cobalt using our very basic rover here. This episode we are going to do some base expansions. We've got plenty of hydrogen storage here to deal with the ice that we're getting from our drilling apparatus, but we do not have space to deal with the stone that's going to come in from that, especially not at the speed that it's coming in. So one of the first things we're going to do here is add ourselves a large cargo container. And that did not go where I needed to go. I just right-clicked. That was my mistake. I need the automatic rifle to stay on 1. And I want the large cargo container to override the medium one. And that can just go right... Oop, need interior plates, naturally. Do we have any interior plates? We do not. Let us make some. I'm pretty sure we need more than 10. But I'm just going to do 10 for now so I don't overbuild them. Really, I only need 1 at the moment. So I can get this placed and find out exactly what we need. I need 300 interior plates. Alright, that is lined up correctly. Alright, so in actual fact we need 290 interior plates because we made the 10. There's 290 interior plates, 60 construction components. We really only need 59. We need 24 metal grids, and that's what we needed the cobalt for. We cannot make metal grids without cobalt. 60 small steel tubes, 20 motors. What did I say, 20 motors? I forgot already. 20 motors. 1 display, 8 computers. Alright, that is it. We'll see if we actually have the resources for that. We do have enough silicon already in the assembler. We need 660 iron, which we have. We need 73 nickel and 24 cobalt, which we have, and we have. Good. Now we just have to wait for it all to build. In the meantime, we'll think about what we're going to do next. One of the other things we're going to need to add to the base here is we're going to need a cargo connector, both on the rover and on the base itself. And we are going to attach that cargo connector to a piston so we can make sure it actually lines up at the right height for the connector on the rover. So that's going to require a little bit of engineering to get built rather than just attaching a connector to one of these open conveyor ports. What we will probably do is stick it on the top of this cargo container. We'll stick a piston and then move some conveyor tubes over and down along the side here, so that we can adjust the piston here up and down, and the connector will be at the end of the conveyor tubes, and we will line that up so that it matches a connector on the back here. As far as plans for the future go, we are going to be upgrading our rover. At the very least, as I mentioned, we will be adding a connector onto the back of it so that we can actually charge this battery up. Some other things that we might end up doing is actually, we'll definitely put an ore detector on it, because we knew where the cobalt was when we went to look for it before, because we had our drill out to find it. When you're riding in the rover, you will not actually be able to see anything outside of the rover as far as ore is concerned, because you don't technically have the drill in your hand. So we'll want an ore detector on the rover. We'll also want to put an antenna on the rover, given that we will presumably be stepping out of the rover, and we'll want to be able to broadcast the ore that we found to our HUD. So we'll have an antenna and an ore detector, probably put a gyro on there. And given that we do actually have a pretty decent cobalt supply now, and we'll be able to do metal grids, we might even just go ahead and attach enough atmospheric thrusters to the rover to convert it into our first cargo ship. From that point, we could, of course, attach a drill to the front and turn this into a mining ship rather than just a cargo ship. But whether or not we actually do that, or if we build a separate vessel, we will decide when we get to that point. In the meantime, we are still working here on all of our stuff. We've got our interior plates done. We've got our metal grids, our construction components, and our small steel tubes. We will go ahead and start sticking all that stuff in, and then we will have plenty of cargo space that we can start up our drill again and collect a few more resources. Go. That should be buildable now. Yep. At some point, we will probably also put a programming block down to help manage our inventory. There are plenty of scripts on the Steam Workshop that'll do a fantastic job of that for you. Personally, I'm a computer programmer by trade, a software developer, so what I'll probably do is actually just write my own. I don't expect that I will be doing that on camera, because writing code on camera is about as exciting as watching, well, me dig a hole in the ground with a drill, except worse. But I will, if I do go that route, I will do a quick code walkthrough once that's done, just to kind of show everybody how it works. So as far as our large cargo container here, what we're going to do is we're going to store all of our ingots and ores in here, and then all of our components will be relegated to the small cargo container, because the components take up a lot less space, especially in the aggregate, given the way we're managing our production especially, than the ingots and ores do. Ores especially take up a lot of room, but you can see we're getting most of our ingots in here already and taking up hardly any of our available space. This is our most space intensive set of ingots, because gravel is technically considered a stone ingot, whereas the rocks are considered stone ores. So that took up the most room of everything that we've got, and we're still less than, about 10% full there. And then we'll go ahead and stick the rest of our cobalt that has not yet been pulled into the refinery, the rest of our magnesium that hasn't been refined, and our steel plates that we have remaining will stay there in the small cargo container. And now we're only taking out 12 liters out of 15,000 and change. So we've got a lot more space now. Now, as soon as we start the drill, things are going to kind of indiscriminately go into whatever cargo container they decide to go in. We don't have a lot of control over that unless and until we actually set up a script or some kind of conveyor sorter. That is another option, is to do a conveyor sorter, but we don't actually have space for a conveyor sorter the way we've set this up, because everything just kind of butt up against each other. This will be worth a redesign at some point, most likely. Either that, or we will just tear this whole thing down when we decide to move on from this location. But this is not the most efficiently laid out base. It's just kind of, I'm not going to build any more conveyors than I have to. I'm just going to kind of cram everything together, and I may grow to regret that decision as time wears on. But for the time being, this is sufficient. Now that we do have all of this extra cargo space, we're going to go ahead and turn our drills back on and send them back down, because if you'll remember, we added the drills and started it up and got very little of the way down into the hole as far as what our pistons are capable of supporting, and then had to come back up because we ran out of cargo space. Now we don't have to worry about that. Now we have plenty of room in the cargo container, so we can go ahead and run this and get a little bit more stuff. And that is at 0.5. It says 0.1 there, or 0.05. It says 0.1 there because it rounds up. That's fine. The main thing is that we don't want to be going too fast. I think 0.05 is about appropriate. And then our retractor piston is actually at 0.1, so that will give us a rate of 0.2 meters per second in total when we reverse, like we're going to do now. So if you'll remember, we have two pistons over here that are extending down, and this piston here that starts extended up to actually lift the whole apparatus up, and we're going to pull that back down, and that's going to bring us about 35-ish feet into the ground, because these pistons are, I'm sorry, more like 40 meters into the ground, because these pistons are actually about 10 meters each, because they're 10 meters in total, I'm sorry, because they're 2.5 meters per block, and these are 2 blocks in length when they're fully contracted, and they will extend up to 10 meters. So we can see what we've got as far as stuff coming in here. We're pulling up some stuff, just kind of scraping the sides on our way down. Drill 1's not getting anything because that is the middle drill, and that middle hole has already been taken all the way down. But now we're starting to get through the ice into the stone layer, and very soon we will get as far as we took that down the first time and start actually getting healthy amounts of ore coming up. There we go. That's what's happening now. We're getting a couple thousand there every time it comes up. And that is very helpfully going into the small cargo container instead of the large one. Now that's full, and it is going to start going into the large cargo container, where we have a much more spacious place for that to wait for processing in the refinery. But it is going through the cobalt first. We've got a fair amount of cobalt in terms of what we actually need. It doesn't take a whole lot of cobalt to make our metal grids, and we don't need a whole lot of metal grids. Certainly not now that we have that large cargo container. Next thing we're going to need metal grids for is actually to do the atmospheric thrusters, or potentially hydrogen thrusters if we decide to skip straight to go into space, which I'm probably not going to do, but we could. So that's what we need cobalt for. We don't need a whole lot. We will probably skip the stone into the front of the line, but I do want to get a little bit more cobalt ingots before we actually do that. So we'll just continue on with this for now. But you'll see that we have not filled up the cargo container by a long shot. And let's see how our pistons are doing here. Still got a few more meters to go. Tractor pistons all the way back. Remember, that one was moving more quickly than the others. So these two will take a little bit longer. Take a look down and see it moving downward and spinning. Want to be careful we don't fall in though, because we can get hurt by the drills in survival mode. Looks like we're coming up on the magnesium now, so we'll have some magnesium going into that cargo container now. And at some point we will also want to add another wind turbine, because if we're running all 3 of our machines at once, being the refinery, the assembler, and the O2H2 generator, we are actually causing a drain on our battery despite the amount of charge going in there. We're not running the assembler right now, and I don't think we're running the O2H2 generator either. So we are not actually doing that at this point. It's going to take us 5 hours to recharge, which is a pretty decent amount of time. An extra wind turbine would help that go faster, and also keep us from discharging when we're running all 3 of those machines, which would be a good thing. So our pistons are fully extended. This piston is fully retracted. So we will go ahead and reverse that. We'll get a little bit more stone and magnesium and ice on our way back out, seeing as there will be some stuff to scrape off of the side there. Not a whole lot, but a little bit more than we picked up. We picked up 330,000 stone going down there. That is glorious. And our drills are not full. They're picking up a little bit just as ore comes in, but they're not actually filling up because we still have plenty of room here in the large cargo container. This is not even halfway full. So this large cargo container was definitely a worthwhile investment. We've got 75,500 magnesium ore, which is far more than we will need for a very long time. Still got a decent amount of cobalt that's refining at the moment for us. And we will eventually, as I said, want to skip this stone to the front of the line, because that's going to be the most useful one. We're a little bit low on iron now at this point. That looks like a lot compared to what we had when we were digging holes in the ground manually with the drill, but moving into the phase of the game that we're about to be moving into, that is not very much. Silicon, we're doing well. Nickel, we're doing okay. Don't need nearly as much nickel as we do anything else. Really, iron's the one that you need the most of. So it will behoove us at some point to actually dig out that iron deposit over there, because iron ore is a lot more efficient in terms of getting you iron ingots than stone is. And at some point, we'll probably actually build another mining rig on top of that rather than doing that manually or even with a mining ship. A mining ship is good to have for picking up little bits of stuff, but for something like iron, where you're going to need a lot of it, and you do have a deposit that's relatively nearby, it's probably going to be better for us to just go ahead and set up a little off-site base to drill that out with a kind of automatic mining rig like this, and then just go pick it up with a cargo rover or a cargo ship rather than drilling it out and just carrying what you can back. Um, Drills are weight, they weigh stuff, and you can either use that weight allowance to carry drills, or you can use it to carry cargo. And especially seeing as it's significantly easier to actually use a rover to move cargo than it is to use a ship, given that wheels take less energy and you have to worry a little bit less about weight, and the amount of energy it takes to carry that weight when you're using wheels. And you can't really feasibly build a mining rover. You can, it can be done, but it's certainly not ideal. At some point, I'm actually thinking about trying to put together a large grid rover that we can use to kind of do a basic, kind of drilling rig like this to get us started, and then set up a permanent stationary static grid to actually mine up the deposit. So the large grid rover will essentially pull the stone out and get us down to the point of the deposit, and then we'll do more of a horizontal kind of rig to actually pull the ore out. Because you saw what that deposit looked like down there from the magnesium. That was a very thin band of magnesium, but it's a little bit difficult to tell just how extensive it is in terms of width, going around that point that we actually drilled out. So that's probably going to be our best way to get hold of that. But it's really not worth doing it at this point for magnesium because we don't need it like that. Now, iron, on the other hand, we need like that. And nickel, we're going to need like that. Silicon, we're going to need like that. Gold, we're probably going to need like that at some point, especially when we start building jump drives and gravity generators and stuff like that, because that takes a lot of gold. So we are completely retracted there. We can go ahead and shut that off. Advanced rotor off, and lock. Drills off. We're going to go ahead and add those to a group, since we will need to be turning those on and off somewhat frequently. Although before we do that again, we're actually going to need to attach another piston, because we took that all the way down and left it down there for a minute. So that's about as much as we're going to get, at least in bulk, out of this particular setup. We will need more pistons on there if we're really going to get a whole lot more out of this particular hole. Push us down deeper. Now we can really go as deep as we feel like. From what I understand, most ore deposits won't be found below 100 meters under the surface. So if you're just trying to get down to an ore deposit, you don't really need to go further than about 100 meters. But since we're just getting stone, really we can go as deep as we want to. Another way that we could choose to adjust this thing is we could replace some of these conveyors up here with a piston or two, and then we would be able to kind of slide in and out and just drill the hole that we've got down as deep as we're drilling it now. Have more of a trench than a hole would be another good way to get stone. But as I said, as you've seen, we've got 353,000 there plus another 42,000 there, so we've got almost 400,000 kilograms of stone. That's going to tide us over for a little bit. Anyway, our next step, and we need to go ahead and pull out some steel plates for that, and we need to produce ourselves some more interior plates for that, is we're going to go ahead and set up a connector rig here on a piston so that we can ensure the connector is at the correct height to attach to our rover here, so we can charge it up and load and unload cargo directly without needing to carry it from the rover to the cargo for the base. Now, it's entirely possible that we could just set up a platform here and stick a connector, right on one of these conveyor ports, and it would line up well enough. Maybe we could mess with the wheel height on the suspension a little bit and get it to fit, but really it's better to have a a piston, because then you're not reliant on, you know, exactly how tall your vehicle is when determining whether or not you can actually dock up with your connector. So we are going to go and do the extra work and make that happen. At some point, depending on, you know, what our production situation is too, we may spend some time just stripping down the respawn pod, because as I said, we do want to put an antenna and an ore detector on here. There's already one on the respawn pod, so just pulling those off and sticking them on here is going to be a much more efficient use of resources than trying to recraft those, especially because we do have something, you know, a separate vessel here, so there's really not much point in keeping the respawn pod around. At the same time as we do that, we will move the survival kit onto the base, and given the height of these conveyor ports here, kind of extending our platform out in this direction, sticking it on one of those two might make sense, or possibly sticking it on the small cargo container here might make sense as well. But we'll see. We'll figure all that out. In the meantime, we need these interior plates so that we can build the conveyor tube here. But first we need a piston, because that is going to set our height of our connector. Piston, 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 there it is. And I did it again. I don't want it there. That's gonna put it over where our welder goes. There are multiple hotbars. I'm aware of this. I'm just not using them, because a lot of this stuff really is just kind of one-time use stuff, and I'm not gonna be using it again for a while afterwards. Alright, so there's the piston. Then we need conveyor tubes. Then we need connectors. So we will go ahead and put the turn in right away. There's no need to move this up. You know, obviously we're going to be connecting lower than it is now. But we do need to extend it out past the edge of the cargo container, so we'll put, you know, one would probably be enough, but we'll go ahead and do two just so we got a little bit of room. We can actually walk in here and access that cargo port, and we can possibly even put a conveyor junction on there and make use of that cargo port rather than having it be blocked by our piston contraption here. Alright, now obviously this is too low. It won't even fit the curved conveyor tube in there, but that piston is fully retracted right now. So we are going to extend the piston, you know, even by a couple of tenths of a meter, so that we can at least fit the curved conveyor tube in there. Then we'll attach the connector, and then we'll see where we actually need it to be. First things first, though, is going to be completing the piston so that we can extend it and finish putting the rest of our parts on. So we need 6 steel plates and 10 construction components. And then we need 4 steel tubes, 4 motors, 2 computers. And then we need, I think it's 10 steel plates altogether to finish that piston head. But we are going to keep that in there for now, because we don't want to accidentally place it into the piston body as an extra part. We want to save it so that we can use it for the piston head. Because it's not actually necessary to get us to functional. And we'll take it and put it into the piston part. We actually have one extra because it gave us the one for free. Alright, so now we will extend this out. We don't need to go the full 10 meters, so we're just going to put our maximum distance here to 2.5. That'll be enough, because we can almost fit that curved conveyor in, just not quite. So 1 block height will be plenty. And we will have to bring it back down, actually, I'm pretty sure, to get the connector to line up with where we will place the connector on the rover. Not sure if there's a right side up for this or not. Doesn't really look like it. That'll do. So there's our conveyor tube, there's our connector. We'll go ahead and place our connector on the back of the rover. See how it fits given the way we've designed it. We could probably do with a conveyor frame to stick it out a little bit further, but I don't think we actually need one, because there's really nothing else to the connector. That's just on the base. That's just a connector, so it'll stick out here just far enough to make the connection without interfering with anything else. So I'm not going to bother. I do need steel plates though to do that. We need 15 altogether. And then we're going to need 40 construction components. No, we don't need. I was looking at the large grid. We're going to need 12 construction components, 6 small steel tubes, 6 motors, 6 computers. So 6 of everything except for double that on construction components. Now the other advantage here is this is actually going to slightly increase the cargo capacity of our rover, because connectors have some cargo capacity to them. The small grid ones don't have a whole lot. They have 1152, so that's a little bit more than the cockpit, about as much as our personal inventory, and about a third of what the medium cargo containers have. But every little bit helps. Every little bit is a little bit less stuff that we have to carry in our own inventory, or a little bit more stuff that we can carry back and forth from a mining site. You can see that's red at this point because power is switched off entirely to the rover. Now, for the large grid connector, we're going to need 129 more steel plates. As well as 40 construction components, 12 small steel tubes, 8 motors, 40, 8, 12, I think it was 20 computers, yeah. Are we out of iron? Yeah, it looks like we are out of iron. Alright, so that means we're going to make sure we get our stone shifted in here so we can start processing some of that. Go ahead and pull the cobalt out. And we're fighting against the conveyors here. There we go. Now it should do the stone first. Yeah, we did actually run out of iron, but we still have tons of stone. so we can get more iron. We've actually got a lot of ore in our small cargo container, when our intention is to keep that all in the large cargo container. But since we're not doing any of that inventory sorting automatically at this point, it's just doing what it wants to do. Alright, so now we should be pulling the stone out of the large cargo container first. Everything is in there. All the components that we would ordinarily be storing in the small cargo container are still in the basic assembler. That's fine. That's everything but the computers. There we go. Now with these two components done, we can go ahead and park this up. It will transfer power. It won't transfer inventory without the conveyor tubes being connected, but there's not actually any cargo in here anyway, so that doesn't matter. And the main thing that we really need to do here is get this lined up correctly. And of course we would like to charge our battery rather than having it as low as it is, so that the next time we decide to take it out, we're prepared. So we'll go ahead and back this up towards the connector so that we can get it lined up and get it charged up. If I can remember how to drive backwards. Alright, that's about what we want in terms of positioning. Now we'll go ahead and move somewhere, hopefully where we can see it, and adjust our piston, which is the one that isn't named. And we will set a minimum distance here now, because we're going to be going in reverse. We'll just do half a meter to start with, see how that goes. A little bit further. Set it to 1.5. Okay, go ahead and go to 1.2. We're getting close. Don't want to go too much further here. That looks like that might be about right. Maybe a little bit lower, just a little bit. Make it 1.1.
Meteor storm inbound.
All we can really do is hope and pray that doesn't hit us. We do not have any turrets set up at this point. In my last three playthroughs, I have actually yet to be hit by a meteor. You know, knock on wood. The advantage of having a low profile base here. There we go, yeah, it's all landing in front of us, so looks like we're going to be fine. There we go. Perfect. We will go ahead and add our connector onto the hotbar. Set it to switch lock. We're also going to add our connector with a power toggle, because sometimes that force can be a little bit much to handle for a wheeled vehicle, especially, you know, pulling off of it frontwards. We are going to add our battery on here also, and we are going to change it to toggle recharge mode. And that's actually, no, that's not quite all we need. We'll go ahead and put the cockpit on here on the other end and use this to toggle the handbrake, because using P to toggle the handbrake in this situation is probably not a problem because we're not doing a whole lot, but you generally want to have the handbrake operate separately from the connector. So we don't want toggling the handbrake with P to also toggle the connector. We want to be able to control those independently, so hence we'll put the cockpit's handbrake control on its own hotbar item. And that's that set up, so we will press 1 to lock. We will press 3 to put our battery into recharge mode, so now the base will not be running off of the rover's battery, and we will press 9 to put the handbrake on. And there we go, all locked up. base has been expanded. In between episodes, I will go ahead and weld up that conveyor tube because welding conveyor tubes is not exciting YouTube television. And we are at about 35 minutes as far as the episode's concerned here, so I think that's a pretty good time. I remember to start it this time, start the clock. In our next episode, we will have a completed conveyor tube. We may expand the drill. We may do those refits on retrofits on the rover, at the very least to add an ore detector and an antenna, and do some driving around to see if we can find any more ore deposits that are interesting or useful. We still need to have a separate and distinct silicon and nickel deposit. Although we're getting that from stone, so that's not a priority. Our real priority, honestly, is silver at this point, so that we can build a medical bay, or build a additional um, survival kit besides the one that we have on our drop pod. We may also in the next episode do the scrapping of the respawn pod, especially because we're going to want to get the ore components and the radio components off of that so we can put them on the rover instead. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you're interested in seeing the next episode or any of the following ones. Hope you enjoyed it. Likes and comments are appreciated. Thanks for watching. Bye.